Our speaker today, Wendy Karr, is a licensed Unity teacher, but Wendy's a little more than that. She holds a master's degree in history and archival administration. That's a mouthful. In her over 30 years at Unity, Wendy has made a study of the development and growth of the Unity movement. And today she's going to share some special insight with us about our co-founders, Myrtle and Charles Fillmore, and their relationship with the natural world. Most of the beautiful pictures that Wendy will be sharing with us today represent a number of weeks, hundreds of hours, I imagine, of volunteer work that Wendy put in at Unity Village Archives. And of course, Wendy has permission to share these lovely images with us today. So we're looking forward to hearing her beautiful message and seeing those gorgeous images. And our musician today, Lawrence Kirby, hardly needs an introduction, as we all know Lawrence, the guy with the most fabulous mahogany voice, a very, very gifted songwriter. And Lawrence is in the process of getting ready to record some of his amazing music. He's getting technically ready to produce a CD, hopefully soon. So without any further words from me, we are going to, as we settle in to receive Wendy's message, listen to Lawrence gift us and grace us with "It's a Wonderful World," made famous by Louis Armstrong. Over to you, Lawrence.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright blessed day, and the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of the people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They learn much more than I'll ever know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Good morning, White Rock. Thank you so much for inviting me back. It's a real pleasure to be with you today. So, as many of you know, I have a wealth of information about the Fillmores, the Unity movement, our growth, our development, all of those things. And picking out some stories out of that is really challenging for me. And Angelica said to me, well, what's your question for the week? So my question for the week is, can something be beautiful and useful? Because I find sometimes when someone says that something's beautiful, I immediately go into nature or the arts. And I don't always think about human-made things. So what I'd like to present to you in the theme of beauty is a collection, and I've called them vignettes to make it sound fancy, of things that the Fillmores did or that the Unity movement has done to share in beauty and in usefulness. So let's start with just some ideas here. So we have on the one side the field, nicely plowed and full, ready for harvest at some point. And below we have the Unity Inn cafeteria, which sadly the building is no longer with us. It burned down a few years back. But the idea that both can have beauty, both can have purpose, both can be actually a tool to reach a message out to the broader community. So let's talk about this in very general terms, trying not to go too fast or through too many decades, lest we all get a sense of time warp. So this is from the 1920s. So Unity had been around for 40 years, and as you can see, it was quite prosperous. It had all of this land, all of these buildings. And one of the things that really strikes me is what good stewards the Fillmores and their board of directors were in the early years. Well, at all time, but particularly in the early years as the message was getting, shared. And of course, with the absence of the internet and social media and indeed radio and television in the earliest days, getting the message out was all paper-based, all dependent on the postal service to get the material out to the various subscribers and the jails and other places. And one of the things that kind of strikes me, perhaps because I'm the granddaughter of an architect, is that the buildings are beautiful. There is an artistic element to them that make them both purposeful and appealing, something you want to walk into. What amazes me is the only building that's left on this block is this building here labeled E Church and Library. And that is now the home and has been for the last 40 years of Unity Church Universal. And that was the original Unity Church. So if you're in Kansas City, I invite you to go and visit Rev Greg and tell him Wendy sent you. And he'll be happy to give you a tour and show you where the Fillmores did their work in the earliest days. It looks a little worn down now because it went through some iterations in between Unity having it and then Unity having it again. But there's something about being in that building and knowing that those walls, knowing in the depths of the cinder blocks and of the bricks, there is the energy that was Unity in its earliest days. On the left is a screenshot I took from a video I was given permission to share. And it's of a bus with a Rolls-Royce engine, by the way, in front of the Unity Inn. And what's really interesting to me is, it's a very nice building. It was beautiful Art Deco on the inside, but it wasn't a place to push the Unity message. It was one of the first, if not the first, vegetarian restaurants in the Kansas City area, and it was right downtown. And so this bus would go to various office towers and pick up people and bring them to the inn for their lunch and then take them back to work for the rest of their shift. And so for me, this is the beauty of being fed, the beauty of people who are creative in the kitchen, being able to share that meal. And perhaps, tangentially, they got a sense of the Unity mission. But it wasn't required. It was a place to come and be nourished. Now, if you were curious about what was happening in the building next door that appeared to be a church, what more could you ask for? You feed the body and then you feed the spirit. continuing on with the idea of beauty of good food. So they had a soda bar. And in the movie that they filmed in the 20s, they actually show someone with helium balloons tying them to the backs of the chairs of two little kids. It was a cafeteria style restaurant, not unlike the way Unity Inn has been at campus since. I haven't been down there in a while, so I don't know what changes have happened. I know there have been a few. But the idea that you draw people in by the beauty, you draw people in, you know, how many of us have a favorite restaurant after service of a Sunday? And if someone's a visitor, we might say, hey, there's a really great restaurant. I love their food. They're so friendly. Why wouldn't we want to bring people in? So we have the beauty of that community. Now, I do have to acknowledge, some of you may recall, I was here at White Rock back in February to give a talk on Black History Month. And I noted at that time that Missouri was admitted into the Union as a slave state, and that Kansas City was at the time segregated. So there's a little bit of shadow work and, that doesn't really fit. And for us now, looking back, we have an opportunity to say, yes, and there were times when people figured out ways around the segregation. There were ways that we figured out ways to encourage the unity message, regardless of color or economic status or where you lived. And in fact, some of our best church builders and our church planters have been Black people who have gone into their community and started there and then attracted everyone just because they were so keen on their message and they had such beauty in themselves, in their soul, as they presented their message. That's another talk altogether. I'll save that for next year's Black History Month. But I got to tell you a story. And this is the beauty of community and the beauty of, I think Course in Miracles call it God wanting to be anonymous. I might be misquoting. The gentleman in front of you is James Dillett Freeman. And you might say, I think I know that name. Well, if you know this prayer, you know him, because this is one of his prayers. So I gotta share this story because it's just so wonderful to me. So as a young boy, James Dillett Freeman's parents divorced. His mom had custody of him. She got a new boyfriend. He refers to him as his stepdad. I'm not clear whether they actually got married. Doesn't really matter for purposes of this story. But his stepdad got ill. And someone suggested to him that he eat a diet of oranges and that would cure him. Jim suggested at one place that perhaps it was his biological father who had made that suggestion, as payback. But someone else said, there's this Unity Inn and they serve vegetarian food and it's really good and it's really healthy and maybe that would help you. So stepfather and stepson go and have a meal. Now he describes his stepfather as being very gregarious and that after a few meals there, he knew everybody. He knew, all the servers, he knew people in the back, he knew, the regulars. And it was from that Jim became part of the staff of the mailroom as a teen and eventually moved into a number of facilities within the Unity movement. During the 50s after the war, he was the head of the ministerial school and he was head of Silent Unity and he wrote this is just a sampling out of my own collection. There's more books than that, but that's what I had that I could scan a picture of. So without the inn, without that beauty of food and community and a building that was attractive and service that was professional and inviting, would Jim Freeman have found unity? I'm not sure he would have. It doesn't sound like he had much of a church upbringing before that, but yet there was something about the message of that community, of that interest in him, of that interest in what he brought to the table that brought him in as a young man and kept him until his passing a few years ago. It might be a decade now, I'm not sure. But that idea that beauty is not limited to an arrangement of flowers or how your lawn looks or other things in nature. But beauty of nature. In 1919, Unity purchased 58 acres. And one of the things the Fillmores did really well when they expanded was rather than trying to find attractive 1,300 acres, which was the maximum they had, they found small farms next to each other. And as one would come on the market, they would put an offer in and get that piece of property and then get the one next door. And they did tear down the buildings immediately. It wasn't, clear cut or anything. They were very careful to reuse whatever buildings were in good enough condition to be reused. And then as needs were, and as the money was provided, they did eventually tear down some of the buildings and build new buildings and create what we know now as Unity Village. But in the early days, in the earliest days in 1929, they held a conference there, and it was intense, and it rained and rained and rained. There were these things that they did that on the surface, there's a beauty of all of those tents and the wood around to get you through the mud without, getting your feet wet. There's a beauty to that, the beauty to overcoming the circumstances that you're presented with. So as I've noted on the slide, by 1941, they had 1,300 acres. By 2020, it was 100 acres less because now there's an interstate that runs right along the edge of it, and the train has a right of way as well. But still, there's 1,200 acres of land there, and it's not all developed. There was a conscious decision to keep a significant portion of it in its original state. And I know a couple times when I've been down, I've been blessed to see deer. The one year I didn't see deer, I saw deer tracks, and it was clear they were running, and it was clear that there was a bobcat behind it running too. So don't know how that ended, don't want to know how that ended. But the idea that in the midst of, and now they're surrounded on all sides by the urban sprawl of Kansas City, the idea that they would say, it is important to us to have a place of nature that is protected. And I love that they're now, really opening that to the broader community, and they've put trail signs up and things like that to encourage people to come and share the green space that they have produced. Why did they do this? Well, part of it was actually to protect children and to sanctify children, because there was a movement at that time where it was believed that you get the inner city kids out to the country for a week or two, and that would help with their mental health, with their physical health, and it would cut down on juvenile delinquency. Whether or not it worked, that's for history to say, not me. But the idea that, it wasn't about, we need a bigger church, or we need to just slam this message across the airwaves. No, it was always a very peaceful, almost Eastern in its way of, when you're ready, it will appear. But everything was made attractive to sort of pique your curiosity. What's in that building? What's going on over there on Colburn Road? What is it that they've got that is so special? Beauty can also be in farming. Again, these are still shots out of the video. It's a movie done by Hollywood producers. It's it's quite interesting to me. My late husband was an occupational doctor, and he watches this portion. He used to watch this portion with some trepidation, because there were so few safety measures in place. We have open bands, running all the farm implements. And of course we have, open engines and things like that. But the beauty of, we have animals that, to my eye, I'm not a professional, but they look well cared for. They look like they're enjoying what they're doing. They're born and bred to work, and they're working. And the people on the flatbed there, they're working. But it's clear that there is joy in the work. There is clear that there is an understanding that this is part of a bigger picture. So I found this in my archives a few years ago. Eating and exercising habits for students for the Unity Training School, which ran from the 1st of May to the 1st of November. And it was a place for people to come and become Unity ministers. So the equivalent of a seminary, although there were classes that others could take. So they had 200 acres of orchards. They had 5 different kinds of berries. They had, as you can see, a number of cereals grown. I mean, this was, for the amount of property they had, this was some pretty serious biodiversity. And they had canned products and that you could buy on site, and they had dairy products because they had cows. They also had chickens. Little known fact, the chickens actually wore, some of you may have seen this, little red dots that were about the size of dimes. And it was purported that that was beneficial to the health of the chickens. And Unity's chickens wore those eyes or those glasses for a while. So eventually they got out of the produce and livestock because they realized their mission really was about the spiritual principles. But think about it. This is during wartime. The US hasn't entered the war yet, and they're providing food for the local area. And they have actually reclaimed a lot of the land and they are continuing this tradition. I love it when I go into into some of the buildings and, fresh fruit available these days. That's really a concept for me. Especially when we have the markets only open for a few months of the year. So at the bottom of the tower, I'll show you a picture of that in a moment. They had a bookstore kind of thing, and they had this wonderful area, and it had all the canned and jarred jams, ciders, all of the things that they made. So it was really a grocery store in a sense, a spiritual grocery store. And the beauty of community. So before the interstate took over this part of the property, they had, as you can see, this stand. They sold milk, they sold apple cider. I was privileged to work with the widow of the Reverend William Fisher, who wrote a couple of Unity books and was minister, as you might have guessed. She and I worked together in the archives as volunteers. And she shared with me that was actually where they met, was at this fruit market. And what a wonderful blessing for the Unity community that we have this integration of the human side and the spiritual side. We have the message, we have the medium of the message, and we can bless it with, just common, ordinary, really, things, buildings and produce stands and things like that. Rickard Fillmore, who was the number 2 son of Charles and Myrtle, was an artist and architect, and he designed all of the campus buildings. And I love this one. This is actually a building for the storage of their supplies and their maintenance trucks. And yet it's beautiful. There's an intended aspect to it that it would be beautiful and attractive and not just be, some sort of shed out back. This, as I mentioned before, was a water tower. It was, and it has been, a water tower. That's what's up at the top there, is the water. And it really is an amazing sense of beauty to say, okay, we have a limited amount of money, we have a limited amount of land at the time that was constructed. What if we combine the two and put office space underneath a water tower? Now, the building code's a little iffy, but that's what they did. That was the way to make best use of their stewardship. And it's a beautiful piece of architecture. And I've always appreciated that when I get to a certain point near Unity Village, where I have to watch for my turnoff, I can see the red light at the top of the tower. And I know I'm almost back. This is the admin building. And one of the things that it is, you would think, based on its look, that perhaps it's, cinder block that's been stuccoed over. No, this is prefab. This is loads and loads of concrete brought to Unity Village. It was Unity Farm at the time, to create all of these shapes, all of these arches, all of these windows, and to create this in the most economical way possible, because most of this construction was done after World War II when things were a bit tight. And we find in the records that Rickard is meeting with other architects, with other contractors, to find out how it is he's doing this, because no one had done it on this scale before. There are so many firsts in the Unity story. around technology, around how to get the message out, around how to use telephone for prayer. Again, another talk. But the beauty of it, the intentional, I mean, this is a gorgeous building, in my opinion. Even if I didn't know that it was Unity and the history of it, I would say this is still a beautiful building. It's very practical too. So these are just a few vignettes for you of ways that Unity has used natural beauty and human-made beauty to bring people into curiosity about what it is we are, what our message is, why our buildings look the way they do, and what it is that we can bring out of others as they come to us asking the question, what is beauty? With that, I'll invite you to get quiet as we and comfortable in your seat. I almost forgot the most important one. Sorry. I added this late because I almost forgot Lowell Fillmore. How could I forget Lowell? Lowell was the oldest son of Myrtle and Charles, and he succeeded Charles as the administrative leader of Unity after Charles retired. And one thing I love, I had the opportunity as part of my volunteer work to do archival work on a series of letters between Lowell and his niece / adopted daughter. She was the daughter of his youngest brother. Both his brother and his sister-in-law passed when Frances was very young, and they raised her instead. But they had Christmas cards, and the Christmas cards would be from the pets. So some years it was the dogs, some years it was cats, some years it was the dogs and the cats, and they would tell on the parents. They would tell on the humans. What were the humans up to this year? And they're just wonderful glimpses behind the scenes of what these animals meant to Lowell and how important they were to his life. And finally, we have Charles in 3 poses. Preaching to the woodpile outside his car. He and his second wife would make regular trips out to California for the winter, and with his golf clubs. And as many of you may know already, Unity Village does have a golf course, 9 holes. Haven't played it myself, but again, it's now open to the public, and we're bringing the message through because, well, what's going on in the rest of this area besides the golf course? And now I will conclude with Myrtle. Myrtle always had something about nature. She says in her memoirs that she had this understanding that God was in the rocks and the plants and the mosses and everything, and that wasn't where her church of origin, the Methodists, believed. And Myrtle writes, nature is surely the glorified face of God. See the beauty about you and see the manifestation of infinite mind. And now we'll prepare for meditation. And this is a shot I took when I was on campus a few years back, obviously in the fall when the leaves are changing. And there is a certain beauty of the changing leaves. So now I'll invite you to get quiet, wiggle if you need to, and just breathe into the space of the oneness, the space in your body where you feel that connection, where you know that all is well and all is beauty. And we acknowledge in this space that sometimes it's hard to see beauty. There are things happening in this world locally, nationally, internationally, that do not feel beautiful, but feel horrific. And we just allow ourselves to take that feeling and hold it gently, very gently in our hearts, and to love the discomfort, to acknowledge our discomfort and to say, I can choose to see this in a different way. I can choose to give my energy to something better. I can choose to be the lighthouse that shines my beacon of life, love, peace, prosperity, and wholeness to the whole world. We just breathe into that awareness of being the light to the world. And breathing into this awareness, we take a few moments in the silence to hold in mind and heart anyone on our prayer list, any concerns we've seen on the news that have upset us, anything that's going on that we are concerned about or that we are grateful for. To just be in that space, in the silence. And in this moment, we give thanks for technology that allows us to come together, that bridges time zones, space, allows others to see this video and be a part of this service at a different time, going forward. For this time together, for this community that is Unity of White Rock. We are so grateful. And now Lawrence will bring us back into our time of gathering with one of his own compositions.
If you would know my love, if you would know my heart, only go inside. Only go down deep inside. If you would know my God, if you would know my heart, only search inside. you would know your heart, if you would know your love, if you would know your God, only look inside, only search down deep inside, if you would know your God.
Thank you, Lawrence. That was fabulous. I hope that that song will be on your first CD that you produce. And Wendy, thank you so much for your inspiring and really touching message about the Fillmores and natural beauty of the Unity Farm and later Unity Village.